welcome everyone to the PyreSwap show for Thankful Thursday, sponsored by Pocket. I want to start every Thursday, ideally, by just expressing my gratitude to everybody watching this right now, or if you're listening to audio, that as well. I think that, I think it's difficult to put into words just the variegated ways that you people are helping. I insist that I be able to explain to you guys how you're also helping yourself almost every step of the way. I definitely could not do this without you, and in fact, I could not do it without even more people. I think that like the positive impact of everything we're doing here is going to only yield dividends for decades to come, if that makes sense. I need you guys to understand something. When a paradigm shift happens in an industry, this normally means an explosion of wealth, if that makes sense. An example would actually be John McAfee creating the paradigm of antivirus. He doesn't claim that he created the technology of antivirus, but he basically created the paradigm of antivirus, which basically meant that you could effectively have antivirus software as a like cybersecurity product, if that makes sense, that a consumer good that people could have as a subscription. Hello, Naldo, how are you? Good morning. And for that, just say thank you to everybody individually and as a group. I want to talk about the math around how some of this works, because I think that a lot of people don't understand that in PyreSwap's design, there is always an upside. Like, there is always an upside to literally everything that happens. Like, with the exception of like maybe some type of like black swan exploitation event, every single thing that can happen economically has an upside. And if you're always focused on the downside, you might not understand how the whole system works. Does that make sense to you guys? So, like, first of all, I want to talk about the fact that we reduced our Genesis emissions. We reduced our Genesis emissions because our Genesis emissions are, first of all, our Genesis contract is the most aggressive Genesis contract in all of DeFi. It expands at a percentage of total supply over time. Can you guys see this on the board? Can you guys see this? Percentage of total supply over time. Now, if you look at this on the chart, this is a directly diagonal line. Does that make sense to you guys? This is a linear expansion rate every single day. Do you guys understand? Over time, total supply goes up linearly. Does that make sense? Now, most Genesis contracts, in fact, Bitcoin also uses an integer over time expansion rate. It uses a logarithmic curve. Does that make sense? So first of all, I want you guys to understand something. When we reduce our expansion rate, we're not punishing anybody. Does that make sense? Like, do you guys understand when Bitcoin halvens, it does make it more difficult for the miners to acquire Bitcoin for their work, at least Bitcoin of a certain quantity. But what's the upside? Like, what's the upside of the halvening? Like, why do people feel good about the halvening happening? Like, do you guys understand? Like, there's an upside to this happening? Okay. Yes, indeed. Scarcity. Right. And then this causes what? Through game theory, through stochastics. Indeed, Naldo. Yeah, demand, right? Demand will eventually outpace supply. Yeah, that's like what you're doing is you're causing that to happen. So when we are in fact tapering our own total supply curve, because we are in fact tapering our Genesis so it inflates less, we're trying to make that same thing happen for our own curve. Does that make sense? We're going to make it logarithmic, so therefore that it begins looking like this, which allows demand to outpace supply. Now, secondly, so this is just one example of the fact that there's always an upside to everything. There's always an upside to literally everything, unless there's literally a black swan exploit. There is literally always an upside. And if you can't identify the upside, I encourage you to learn more about the way this all works. And sometimes what might not be an upside for you is still an upside for the system. So like what's also important is that you guys understand that the system itself is in this referee position. So the system itself is always rebalancing the way things work. So I noticed Fexer and Electronic We're talking about the gratuity not being increased along with the emissions getting decreased, right? Right? Did you guys understand what, okay, I'll explain this. Today's also Theoretics Thursday, so it's actually great. This is just a great conversation topic. Gratuity, I guess you could say booster yield in the IWV, right? Booster yield in the IWV, right? And then additionally, you have the actual, I guess, what the real yield was. Okay, yeah. And this is volume swap fees. Real yield in the IWV. Okay? So first of all, I want you guys to understand something. Indeed, ZeroX, indeed. In fact, scarcity will also make the buy pressure. Yeah, scarcity will also make the buy pressure make greener candles over time. Do you guys understand this? Like, I don't know if you guys know of a founder or a project who will just come up here every day and explain the math, conceptualize it, tell it to you in a story with knights and witches. Like, I am not hiding shit. In fact, I want you guys to know something. A mathematician literally discovered this project a few days ago, and he literally did a mathematical proof for how it works. That was one of the guys who's boosting the server right now. He's very bullish. A guy who was extremely good at math, better than me at math, did the math, literally wrote it out on a PDF. He presented it to me, and I was blown away because he understood immediately. He's like, this is the best math behind a project he's seen, like, all year. Okay? So, like, he just found out about the project from an old Dow King video and the old Yabonks video. Does that make sense? So I want you guys to understand those old videos still keep putting work in for us. Does that make sense? Like, I want you guys to understand that even that work is compounding for us. It's not going anywhere. The stickers we put up last week, they're still getting eyeballs. Eventually, people will see enough stickers that end up just scanning it. Okay, so first of all, reducing emissions is not a punishment. This is what Satoshi Nakamoto did in the Bitcoin curve. Does that make sense? Yeah. Men lie, women lie, numbers don't. That is the actual Jay-Z quote. Oh, Yabonks? I have no idea. Yeah, I have no idea. Eventually, sometime in the next 10 days, probably. Yeah, that's not my ability to stick to a schedule. It's the fact that Yabonks doesn't live here. Oh, well, Electronic, I'm personally working on recruiting him into the circus right now. Yeah, but eventually you can, eventually we'll reformalize it, and, eventually it'll be reformalized, and perhaps we'll present it. Yeah, by the way, Electronic, I personally plan on including it in the long version of the documentation. Does that make sense? Because for people who are going to read the long version, they want nothing more than a gigantic fucking page of equations. Wouldn't you guys agree? Wouldn't you guys agree that's long version material? Right? Yeah, like, I'm not putting in the short version. Get the fuck out of here. Right? Like, I do not want to put extra shit in the... Maybe a few of the newer diagrams we can put in the short version, but that's it. Does that make sense to you guys? Everything else is long version from here on out. Yeah, Jabri, you also understand me very well. I get it. Yeah, you also come from a thermodynamics background. So, exactly. Okay, so when we effectively taper emissions, we are in fact tapering gratuity, right? Like, the booster yield in the IWV goes down, and therefore, like, the total size goes down, right? Total incants size, right? This also goes down, right? And if the total incant size goes down, does that make sense? Like, what happens next? First of all, you'll see that more and more people are withholding from playing, right? Did you guys see that? Like, literally, the total incant size goes down, meaning demand is reduced for the incantation. Does everybody follow? Does everybody follow? Okay, yeah. Demand being reduced, but isn't that a bad thing? Yes, but again, you need to think about it for the fact that demand being reduced is also putting all the whales into the waiting room. Does that make sense? Right? So the fact of the matter is, this is going to happen in the future as well. Like, for whatever reason, imagine that Bitcoin goes to 200 grand and then it crashes all the way down to 60. Guess what's going to happen for the week after that? It's going to be like, you know what? The demand went down. I don't want to play. Blah, 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 blah. Does that make sense? It's going to be the same sentiment, right? It has nothing to do with Genesis. Like, I'm talking about post-Genesis. The total incant size might also, in the future, get sharp reductions. Does that make sense to you guys? If Bitcoin goes to 200 grand, yeah, and then it literally crashes to 50 grand, like a month later, we're going to have low-ass volume days compared to where we were a month before that when Bitcoin was 200 grand. Everybody follow me? Right? Like the day that the next winter starts, right? A month after that, it's going to be low incantation sizes. But the incantation will still keep happening. And this is the point. I want you guys to understand the incant size right now is not very big, even when it was yesterday. Does that make sense? Like, we're still incredibly small. If I haven't made it clear, we're scaling this project to 100,000 people, okay? I know I talk about 300, 600 people that we need, but we're going to go past that too. Does that make sense? So, like, even now, we're still in the very, like, launch size, introductory size incantations. So it's like, oh no, they got even smaller. To me, it's like, this is all just dust. Does that make sense? Like, there very rarely do we even split $100 per epoch, do we, right? Which is fine, because people still need to learn this game. If you guys remember, I wanted people to learn this game with playing with $5 of tokens. Does that make sense? And I still kind of advocate for that. Learn it with $5. We don't really message that explicitly anymore because I think that it only confuses people like more. Like, why only $5? And I'm like, I just need you to play with an amount that like you can feel it, but you won't fucking lose your head over it. And then, you know, I think that a founder telling his own user base that they should perhaps like scale into their exposure is very rare in DeFi. I think my job, according to DeFi, would be like, you should YOLO into this project with your life savings today, sir, right? But I think that's kind of incredibly irresponsible. Everybody should invest what they can afford to lose. Does that make sense? You might be able to afford more than you think, but the fact of the matter is that, like, seriously think about what your exposure is. I want you guys to understand something. When we first launched Genesis in June, I was explaining to people, you didn't need to think that this was going to be the only money you can make in this project. Even right now, our TWAPs are on the floor. In theory, we have entered a new bottom where you can make money again with this project. Does that make sense? Like, this project doesn't die. This is the most important thing that you guys are seeing. It's not from me doing these AMAs. Yeah, if I got into a medical coma for 2 weeks, like, this, people would still be playing. You know what I mean? Like, enough people understand it to that point. Does that make sense? Like, am I going to be able to do the PyreSwap show forever? Once I hit like 300 to 600 people, like active users, I'll probably try to make it 4 times a week instead of 6 times a week. To be honest, it's not just this, right? Like, the fact of the matter is, enough people understand the incentive because, holy shit, I can get paid to fix the token. I can get paid to fix the token. Does that make sense? Like, Tomb Forks allow you to get paid to break the token. The IWV allows you to get paid to fix the token. Does that make sense? Do you guys get it? And the reason that it's small sometimes is because it's time value of money. Like, the swap fees are small. It must have meant that the previous 6 hours were not that valuable compared to the Bitcoin, to the crypto economy as a whole. Everybody follow me? Like, you'll notice that no 2 epochs are going to be the same amount of incants. Does that make sense? They're always like a variety. That is a random number generation to keep you guys acting random, by the way. In the future, it'll be a lot more random. And the thing is designed for a large capacity for randomness. Right now, we have maybe, 75 total daily users. Half of them are only in Genesis. You know what I mean? Maybe we have like 25 people on the IWV. Like, that number will also swing up and down. Making sense to you guys? Like, that's all built in. So the fact that some people, the total incant size went down. I guess I won't play. Good. You're not meant to play every epoch. Why so cynical playing 4 times a day is ludicrous. That is like such a fluke individual. Does that make sense? Like, there's literally a fucking diagram. I'm going to go to the diagrams. There is literally a fucking diagram that literally explains your decision making. Have you guys seen this? Yeah. Oh yeah, I'm literally. Oh, it is? Phenomenal. Okay, well, I'm going to. Oh, good to know. Okay. Really? Yeah. Oh, shit. Yeah, I will just do that on the screen then. Yeah, let me go to the documentation. Docs.pyreswap.finance. And I can just pull it up from the docs. Oh, okay. That's good to know. Well, I will, in the meanwhile, I'll just... The incantation witch vault strategy tree. Look at this, guys. Look at this, guys. I'm going to pull this up on a new tab. Let's zoom in. Literally, should I participate? Like, literally, not currently. And this can be based on, is the EPR shown in the IWV dashboard appealing to me? Is it possibly more appealing to others than it is to me? Like, I told you guys what your decision-making process was fucking months ago. Does that make sense? Like, literally, is it appealing? Should I play? Appealing to others? It's like, well, maybe, should I pass? Does that make sense? Is there potentially more profitability in speculating on the activity of others than in pursuing the rewards of incants myself? Is there potentially more to gain from observation than participation? Is there more to gain from observation than participation? Is there more to gain? I literally put this in. Don't let me find out you guys didn't read this diagram. This diagram was a pain in the ass. I should pass. Holy shit. It's almost like passing is something you can choose to do every single epoch. Yeah, I appreciate that, dog. I appreciate it. I'm assuming most of you guys read it, but like I feel sometimes that like if it's not appealing to you, I don't want you to play. Does that make sense? Literally, you can also say, do I enjoy causing the pain and suffering of others? Does everyone need a reminder of whom they're dealing with? I should pester. This is 100% fair game. That's 100% fair game. Does that make sense? The fact of the matter is like why? Like why is that okay? I'm also bullish on pestering. Yes, later on, I think you'll see more pestering when we have more players. When you get more bang for your buck on pestering. Also, when we take the usurping guard down, pestering is very popular. So yeah. So for those of you who don't know, we have a usurping guard up right now, and the usurping guard limits the amount of pestering that you can do. It limits it a little bit, but it does still allow for usurping after 10 minutes go by. Some people are getting usurped still by people that are just willing to wait the 600 seconds. Anyways, if total incant size goes down, it's almost like the people whose bags are too big, they literally start passing. Wow. Which is almost like that is beneficial to who? It's literally from passing. It is from passing we establish. What do we establish? EPR support. Does that make sense? Do you guys get it? Do you guys get it? It's like, oh no, the yield was only 0.13 EPR. It would have been lower if people weren't passing. Does that make sense? Like when whales are passing, this is great for small players. Do you guys understand? This is in the design. This is in the design. This game is not meant to literally just fold like a napkin for a fucking whale. Does that make sense to you guys? Like it's in the design. This is meant to be something for the degen. I built it with you in mind. It is for somebody who does not have $1 million crypto bag or 100,000 crypto bag or even 5 figures or even 4 figures. It is literally meant to be able to be played by people in the first world or people in the third world. I'm dead serious. It is from passing we establish EPR support. EPR actually doesn't get crushed down as much as it would if there were whales entering. Now I know that the people who are playing with 6-figure bags right now, you guys might not feel good, but it's not about you guys. Yeah, it's not. This project isn't just about spoon feeding you dopamine. This project is about making a economy that overall is capable of serving a variegated group. The fact that we need a larger user base is because it variegates the group further. Does that make sense? If you don't like how it looks to you, maybe you should change your position. Yeah. Like if the EPR looks too low, maybe you should play with less. Maybe there is more to gain from observation than participation, like it says on the diagram. Does that make sense? Now you might be thinking, oh, but if less people participate, won't the smoldering rate go down? Yes. But then the people who do participate, they start compounding their positions. So the small players start getting big. So even as they keep going through, even if the smoldering rate gets depressed, it starts rebuilding itself through the same compounding curve of what? Of the fucking EPR. The EPR literally compounds the smoldering rate back up. Does that make sense? Like, so even when this system gets literally dropped to its fucking knees, the next 6 hours, it just starts repairing itself. It doesn't complain. It doesn't give permission to its pessimism. It just gets back on the fucking horse. Oh my goodness, Javery. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Again, I want you guys to understand something. Stop giving your pessimism so much permission. Like, in general. Like, if you see something negative, like, figure it out how to spin it to a positive in your mind so you're not just going to deliberately weaken yourself or limit your own options on what to do about a situation. Like, this game is not meant for me to just spoon feed you dopamine. It is an extremely competitive PvP financial instrument. To be clear. As clear as I can get. Like, it is not meant to be like a goddamn big old titty that you can just close your eyes and nurse from. To be clear, we have this NFB idea, right? Like, it's not for beginners. We don't really, like, push that. We don't really say as much as we need to because, in theory, everybody's a beginner when it comes to active staking. But, yeah, like, I mean, like, this is meant to be a system that never dies, not something that you never lose. Does that make sense? Like, I literally lost on camera yesterday. I lost, like, 0.6%, right? But, like, does that make me, like, bearish on the project now? No. Like, that was meant to happen. Make sense? Yeah. Okay, do not screen share the chat until they've at least until they've at least grown up a little bit. Yeah, okay, thanks. Okay, it is from passing that EPR actually doesn't go to zero. Does that make sense? Like, literally, it's like, wow, well, that EPR line, and oh no, if less people are playing, then the smoldering rate is going to go down. But wait a minute, all the smaller players, they're now compounding their position. So the next time they play, they're going to actually smolder in the same scenario a little bit more. Does that make sense? Like, literally, like, no matter how many times you can kick the mechanism down the hill, it just starts climbing again. It does climb faster with a larger user base, which is why I just keep saying it's not volume, it's not capital, it's a larger user base. It's just more pairs of eyeballs. That is the only resource we care about. Everything else is just mathematics that will just fucking repair itself. If you want to see the whole body come to life, we need to fill it with blood, lifeblood. Does that make sense? And that's human beings. Like, I know that most people can't see this for some reason. I can't wait till I can just start teaching self-awareness. Like, I think that everyone's like, oh, but I need this number to go up. It's like, that number is literally a derivative of something underlying. Does that make sense? Do you guys get it? Like literally, even price is a derivative of supply and demand. Do you guys get it? Like, there's things behind that. And I'm just going to work on the smallest thing, maybe the thing that you guys observe the least, because if you want to make an explosion of wealth, you'll need to find something that's incredibly undervalued and then leverage the shit out of it. Make sense? Tons of projects like NFT projects or things like that, they're always like, oh, they have a great community though. You know what I mean? Like, people don't understand the fucking projects, but they like say, oh, the community's great. We are investing in our community being great. Javery, yeah. You know, Javery, Javery, some people say that I should try to be the, you know, like you have the professor influencers now, like Peterson and Huberman. So I should just try to be the econ professor influencer. Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, Javery, I can definitely dabble with different schools of economics too. Like, I know quite a bit and I'm all over the place. Yeah. But anyways, economics, like especially behavioral economics, it comes down to like human decision making. I mapped this all out in the design. Like, literally, like what you guys could do to serve yourself or adjust your position or learn something new or gain an advantage. Like, all those things are baked in. Yeah. The fact that people are getting comfortable with botting the IWV right now, in theory, this is also something that goes away. Because during the real game, there's way more actors and there's way more variables. So right now, this is almost like a fictitious era where you can, in fact, I guess one or two people have succeeded at doing this. Yeah. This ecosystem also has two different roles called witches and knights, which effectively, like, they have an intergame. Like, they have an intergame with each other. And I'll explain how this works. Did I talk to you guys about intergame before? So, I want you guys to understand that the witch role, witch actor, and knight actor they are both codependent and co-parasitic. I think that maybe it's hard to understand that, like, who here knows who Winston Churchill was? Fat British guy? Yeah. Yeah, that guy. Yeah, British. And anyways, Winston Churchill was the he was the prime minister of the UK for, like, I don't know, 40 years, something like that, like really fucking long time. And I actually have no idea what the actual time is. Okay, well, Tendai, one of the things that Churchill is most famous for internationally, like outside of Britain, is what? Like, what historical event is, like, the best years of Churchill? Yeah, like, what is his, like, most famous legend story? I mean, World War II is what I would describe. Yeah. Like, there's a whole bunch of other stories about Winston Churchill, but World War II was really where you can get the best Churchill speeches and stuff like that. Oh, well, yeah. I mean, there you go. Like, I was going to say, I mean, like, the bombing of London.
They call it the Blitz.
Do they? Okay, yeah, because it's German. Yeah, I get it. Blitzkrieg, I get it. Never give up, never surrender. But again, if you guys don't understand, like, why is that event considered to be, like, so legendary for Churchill? Because he had an enemy. Does that make sense? He had Hitler and Mussolini and the Emperor of Japan. Does that make sense? Like, there was a gallery. There was, like, a gallery of foes. Does that make sense? I'm not gonna comment on that. But the fact of the matter is, if you were thinking about, like, a professional athlete, like Messi, does that make sense? And, like, Messi has a rivalry with Ronaldo now. Does that make sense? But, like, the fact of the matter is that for this story to be so aggrandizing in the human mind, like, they need that rivalry. They need that adversity. They need that antagonism. Does that make sense? Like, they need it. They need it. Otherwise, there's no point to them. Does that make sense? So, the knight actor and the witch actor are codependent in the sense that, like, without each other, like, there's no point for them as a role. Does that make sense? The witches can just be PvP among each other. But then at a certain point, when the knights begin playing the game a different way, in, like, an organized teamwork way, this will also kind of inspire the witches to play in a certain way with the expectation of knight behavior. Additionally, the knights are parasitic. I'll show you this. The knights are parasitic on the velvet rope pattern and the IWV. The witches are parasitic on the boardroom. Did you guys know that? The knights, when they need to get their tomb forks above 0.8 to peg, they either need a masquerade trade or they need to literally scalp yield and then dump for their peg coin in order to climb to peg. Do you guys know why we have those max swap buttons? Why there's 4 of them? Yeah, but then also Javery, if you are loyal to a certain tomb fork boardroom, does that make sense? Yeah, if you are loyal to a certain tomb fork boardroom, you can bring that extra bit of yield back to buy pressure on that peg coin. Making sense? Yeah. Now you can also just jump to Phantom or whatever, or AVAX or BNB as well. But the fact of the matter is that like witches, on the other hand, they're under no obligation to braid because they can hold minority share coin positions across all the fucking tomb forks, and whenever those get up to print, the witches can just dump those fucking prints. In fact, there are tactics that witches can use to leave prints pending and then dump them in order to get the incantation to go arcane. Did you guys know that? This is advanced tactics, by the way. But witches can be in the boardroom and then effectively cabal amongst each other. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Imagine that you see Pyre Phantom at like 0.97, but it's just like chopping up between 0.97 and it just keeps getting dragged back down. It just won't cross peg, right? Liquidity's deep. It's going between 0.97 and like 0.94. It just kind of stays there for a while. Well, you can, as witches, coordinate large dumps of prints with the right time to game the arcane. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Because you could dump a whole bunch of 2-ohm prints at the same time if you wanted to at least try your luck. Yeah, it is wild. Yeah, again, there is layers and layers to this game that I haven't really gotten into yet. It's because of the knights using teamwork against the witches that the witches actually create another layer to their game where they are not infiltration. We call it masquerading, actually. But yes, we call it masquerading. So, did you guys see the PyreSwap.com landing page? Yeah, let's see. Screen share. If we're going down here. Yeah, this picture right here, you'll notice that it's like, this is at a masquerade. Yeah, Javery, that might win sometimes. Yeah. But the witches have their own agenda. And you have to understand, guys, the witches and the knights are literally likely it's really like I expect this. The iceberg of PyreSwap. Is that like a Titanic reference? Anyways. I expect that depth of concepts. Yeah, I get what you're saying. Like the layers and the layers and the layers. Yeah. I can definitely kind of like do this type of sequential analysis. Anyways, as far as like a video idea, you know, Koyas, that's the type of stuff that the long version of the docs needs. Does that make sense? The long version, like, I honestly don't even want to turn it into a video because it's like, okay, the level of production we would need is, I mean, we could do it, but again, that's going to have to come way fucking later. We'll have to do some, we'll have to get marketing and content much more automated so that we can maybe spend more time doing higher production tutorials. Yeah, just 10 hours of me just talking about stuff. Anyways, it's my expectation that effectively most players will kind of have a 80-20 or like a 20-80 favoritism, depending. Does that make sense? In fact, a witch player, somebody who's a good witch would probably be a little bit in like all 9 boardrooms. Does that make sense? Like, as a witch, you probably want to be spread out among boardrooms, right? But as a knight, you want to be concentrated in like the boardrooms on a single chain. I mean, you can be in all 9 as well, but it'll eventually get a lot. It'll be a lot to manage. Yeah, it'll be a lot to think about. I think if I was playing as a knight, I would keep it on one chain. But people do that anyway here, so I think that'll happen naturally. Some knights can be on all chains, but again, yeah. So just because you're playing a game and you see a loss doesn't mean, like you see a number go down, doesn't mean that we're actually like getting farther from the goal. Like we are in fact compounding that fucking hiccup. Literally 90% of the time, the system works just by its numbers. These large surges are all just noise that I baked into the system so it would automatically repair from that. Because you're going to see these scenarios where Phantom or Avalanche just rallies 70% overnight, or it crashes 70% overnight. And none of that stuff matters here. Like, it doesn't really affect us. Like, if you remember the other diagram, we talked about, like, how can red candles not kill it? And we talked about PyreBNB. That's just talking about the upside and downside of dibs against PyreBNB. But, like, that applies to everything as well. So, like, even if the EPR goes down, do you guys know what market consolidation is? I actually have this up. Yeah. Consolidation, literally, this is where it talks about all of the numbers get crunched. They get pinched down. Have you guys ever seen this on a chart? On a price chart? Like, it seems like the chart kind of gets crunched down. Like, it's going through this sieve. Does that make sense? Literally, that's how PyreSwap responds to stuff. It begins a consolidation, and then it breaks out of it. Every time meeting happened, do you guys remember, yes, a squeeze. Do you guys remember, for those of you who were here pre-Genesis, do you remember when we would have a large surge in minting, right? And it would be like, oh shit, we only have a total supply of like 700 Pyre Phantom. But then eventually, it was like 4 days, it would flatten, and then it would just start upticking again. Like, wow. Like, granted, we had decay helping it along, but like all that decay is doing is just making the coin more scarce. It's the same thing as smoldering, right? Like, there's just less coin in the issue. The tokens itself are still getting bought by the incantation as well, by the volume from arbitrage. Making sense, everybody? That is still, that is, okay, parasailing was still something that had decay in the math, but Dr. Mac, parasailing involves the 2 tokens, okay? So when I talk about parasailing, I'm referring to like 2 ohm, the way 2 ohm follows Pyre Phantom. So first, if Pyre Phantom goes down, 2 ohm can follow it. In fact, you can see that on TWAP right now, because we used to be at like 0.15 and now it's like 0.10 or something like that. Does that make sense? So you're already seeing that, but parasailing, we're referring to 2 moving objects. One of them is the boat. The boat is Pyre Phantom. The objects that are parasailing are like 2 ohm, 3 ohm, and Z ohm. So like when it gets faster, it's capable of pulling it up. When it gets slower, it's capable of pulling it down. Assuming 0 human trades on 2 ohm and just Phantom movements, see, that also does provide arbitrage volume to the decks. Yeah, every time Phantom changes price, bots move in. They bring fees to the incantation, and that fees get bought on Pyre Phantom. So yeah. Now again, see, the meterage helps with the volume. Does that make sense? Because when people swap through meterage, it creates a lot of cascade volume across other pairs. Does that make sense? They're all set up like dominoes. So $100 transaction can cause thousands of dollars of volume on PyreSwap. It'll be able to do that even better in phase 2. Yeah, that's the idea. So like, if 2 ohm, okay, if Phantom just goes up, let's say if Phantom goes up and 2 ohm stays flat, well, we still have 2 ohm against things like USDC or 2 ohm against 2 share, right? And then Phantom is also against 2 share. So if 2 ohm, And then let's say we have 2 ohm 2 share here. So if we just see Phantom go up on like Coinbase or some shit, people will arbitrage through here, and the fact of the matter is there's a path where effectively they're like, okay, this Phantom is undervalued, right? Because this Phantom isn't as high as I can sell it for on Coinbase. In order to buy this Phantom, I have to sell 2 ohm for it, right? I gotta sell 2 ohm to buy it here. Well, in order to buy 2 ohm, I effectively have to either go through here or go through something else. Does that make sense? Here, I guess it would be like it almost locks, but we also have 2 ohm against things like fucking stable coins. Does that make sense? Like we also have 2 ohm against like USDC. I don't think it's a lot of liquidity, but like the fact that it's in a stable coin also helps with the background arbitrage of, you guys get what I'm saying? Right? Because it's like, okay, well, I can buy USDC, I can sell USDC to buy this, and then literally I can sell 2 ohm to buy this, which then I can sell on fucking Coinbase for profit. Make sense? This right here would be like, okay, well, if Phantom goes up, depending if they have another way to get into 2 ohm and 2 share. Yeah, like I guess right here would make sense. But yeah, if they have another token to get into, like a stable coin, we also have things like the Stargate token, STG. We have the STG in parity. We have the, we also have ETH, right? So you also see like 2 ohm against ETH. If you're wondering why do we have 2 ohm against ETH, it's like literally for this. Does that make sense? It's not like the deepest amount of liquidity, but like it will be deeper in the future. I'll tell you that. Yeah. Do you guys remember in the documentation of the Tomb Forks, it's like this project solves a liquidity problem on Phantom. Do you guys remember that? It solves a liquidity problem. Yeah? No? Well, we're actually using those tokens. Vaguely, okay, you can see it in the old Tomb Finance docs. If you use, Steve remembers it. If you use the Wayback Machine, you can actually see it. We actually use the peg coins to solve a liquidity problem on Phantom. Does that make sense? We are actually trying to spread them out into lots of pairs. Yeah. Yeah, Pega, it had more to do with, I think, the fact that, like, they needed, like, Phantom to have a greater ease of transferability or something like that. And the thing is, Pega, nobody understands liquidity. So, like, it's like a tagline that, like, means nothing. Like, Tomb solves a liquidity problem on Phantom. What liquidity problem? I don't know. Like, everyone's like, oh, okay. Like, it really blows my mind that human nature is like, everybody just wants to pretend they know what they're talking about. So they just like, this reminds me of like the way, like, you know, children talk, you know? Did I tell you guys that story about, like, you know, like the way 12-year-old boys would be like, what? You don't know how to play Texas Hold'em? It could have been that, yeah. Yeah, it could have been that. But, like, again, that is also like a narrative problem. That's like a narrative problem, right? Because it's almost like, what does that actually mean? Like, what's the liquidity problem? By the way, I was explaining this. This is what I was explaining, how this was the problem with all Tomb Forks. Because the reason that, okay, if you're talking about just Tomb against Phantom, right? The problem here is that Phantom gets used as gas. Phantom has utility value. Does that make sense? And I was explaining 2 ohm also needs, I would say minus utility value. This one has a plus. Tomb needs, I don't even pronounce this as Tomb anymore, I just say 2 ohm. Tomb needs utility value in order for the fact that when it goes below peg, there has to be a reason for it to return to this peg. There needs to be a reason, there needs to be a use case. There needs to be a reason that people would buy it. Because Phantom can get bought just for gas. Do you guys get what I'm saying? And the fact that Phantom can be consistently bought for gas is what makes it something you can speculate on. Does that make sense? So I want you guys to know something. You can trade right now on things like oil futures, right? Okay, why can you speculate on oil? Oil is used for gas. Yeah, it's used for gas. Duh. 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 Does that make sense? Because if we weren't using oil for anything, like, does that make sense? You know, they don't really have oil. They don't really have futures for things like grass clippings. I mean, you could fucking issue a future for grass clippings, but there isn't really like a market for it. Does that make sense? Yeah, industrial lubricants. Yeah, you can fucking you can cook with oil, right? You can use it for hydraulic fluid. You can use it for plastic. Did you guys know that plastic is made out of hydrocarbons? Do you guys know that? Yep, so Seabiscuit knew hydrocarbons are what plastics are made out of. By the way, and oil is also, when they talk about bioplastics, like they're talking about like hemp plastic, I want you guys to know technically hydrocarbon plastic would also be a bioplastic because oil is also coming from a biological resource, which is like fossils. Making sense, everybody? So again, why, like what is it that allows people to speculate on Pyre Phantom, Pyre AVAX, and Pyre BNB right now when they're at their all-time low? Or I'm assuming they are, yeah. Or they're near their all-time low if they're not, right? Like what really like opens the case of that? Like it's like, oh, it's present and future use cases. And you also know the price it means to target. I hope nobody connects the dots there. I might connect the dots. Anyways, let's see. Do you guys understand the integer math, like the Genesis math of integer over time? So most Genesis contracts, they'll just say, okay, we're going to do 100 tokens per second. And they're going to have a total supply of 1, right? Total supply equals 1 at 0 seconds. Does that make sense? So at the 0 second mark, they have 1 token minted for like the first piece of liquidity. Right? Seabiscuit does not know what that means? Okay. So what this means is at second 2, total supply equals 101 at 1 second. Does everyone follow me? 201 at 2. 301 at 3. 401 at 4. Does that make sense? Do you guys understand this? If they're going to emit 100 tokens per second during a Genesis, at the 0 second mark, there's a total supply of 1 because what will happen is they'll mint the first one to put it in liquidity. Making sense, everybody? We had that to a degree as well. But then they're just going to emit 100 tokens per second. So in the first, now I want you guys to understand why this creates a logarithmic curve. The gain between 1 and 101 is like 10,000%, right? Now the gain between 101 and 201 is a gain of 100%. The gain between 201 and 301 is a gain of 50%. 301 to 401 is a gain of 33%. Do you guys see this? So do you guys understand that on a fucking curve, it's, well, can I go lower here? Let me just, okay. It's going to start off super steep and then literally tapers like that. It's called a logarithmic curve. Yeah. Well, Seabiscuit, it's the extinction of APR, if that makes sense to you guys. Do you guys get it? So that literally, like, the value of the token, like the yield per day. Yes. So there's 2 types of curves, exponential and logarithmic. Actually linear too. So, okay. Does everyone understand this trend? I'm assuming everyone does. I'm going to keep moving. Three types of curves, three general ideas. You have a curve that looks like this, a convexity. You have a curve like this, and this is linearity. You have a curve like this, which is logarithmic. Everybody follow me? This is an exponential. This is linear. This is logarithmic. Make sense, everybody? Okay. There's other types of more complex curves, but like these are the, like if you hear me say these words, convexity means that like the things are like acting like this. If you heard me say before, back when we had decay on, I was saying, hey, there's decay, so you'll see convexity show up in the curve eventually, right? When we turned decay off, it went linear. Do you guys get it? Because the decay is in fact another variable in the equation over time that kind of acts as an exponent. Make sense? Anyways, we turned decay off, so you saw a linear decrease of the chart. Now, I want you guys to understand something, but you're like, but sometimes it looked like it was more linear, right? Oh, is it, what do you say, linear? Linear, L-I-N-Y-U-R, linear. Linear. Yeah, I'm going to say it linear from here on out. Yeah, I'm going to say if there's a, yeah. Linear. Like that. Linear. Yeah, that's how we're gonna write it from here on out. The linear curve. Anyways, so we have the price chart, and we have this downtrend, but then sometimes it looks like it's going down exponentially, and it is. Do you know why? Because there's always a second layer to what's going on, and that is speculation. Speculation is always in the exponent. Does that make sense? Linear. Do you guys get what I'm saying? But the fact of the matter is, if you guys saw plummeting, does that make sense? Because it was speculative plummeting, have no fear. What does that imply? What does that imply when we begin starting to see upticking? I think last Saturday we saw a sell-off, right? Spooky. Scary. But at the same time, I think it's important that I do these PyreSwap shows and that they get recorded just to demonstrate that there is significant levels of depth to the method of my madness. Yeah. Sentiment shift, yeah. ZeroX agreed. Yeah, because people are going to be looking for a physical idea of it, right? First of all, the first way you'll see it is you'll see it on the PPESD. So the people who can read the PPESD first, they'll start saying, okay, according to the PPESD, we might be at a flat now, right? At the 1% mark, which, by the way, maybe we'll be flat now. I see there's a lot of flattening on the chart. We're going to taper emissions again on Sunday, somewhere between Sunday and Tuesday, and we'll be tapering emissions again. Does that make sense? By the way, we still have like 5 months of Genesis, to be clear. So like a 1% daily for 5 months on a token that's probably at all-time low. I mean, I don't know. Sometimes I just don't know why people don't know things. I do struggle with this. You're going to see on the PPESD, you're going to see TWAPs go a certain direction, and you'll be wondering, wait a minute, are we flat now? Are we in a bit of an uptick? Suddenly, we're going to stay flat, and then suddenly, you're going to have a random up. JB, what's going to happen is we're going to have a weird, freakish day where volume has a surge. Does that make sense? We're going to have a weird, freakish day where market behavior surges the volume, and if it surges the volume, it's going to cause a surge of fees. And when it causes a surge of fees, you're going to see an uptick in the incantation. Yeah, I would say a surge of fees will create a larger candle, which effectively will create what looks like a speculative upshift. Does that make sense? It'll make us look linear. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Not linear. Not linear. It'll make us look exponential. Does that make sense? It'll be like an exponential uptick. Just a small exponential uptick to the way that the chart looks. Does that make sense? Just through the velvet rope pattern itself. Do you guys get what I'm saying? There'll be all of a sudden there'll be like a whoosh candle, like, oh wow, that was a big buy. Why was it a big buy? And be like, oh, I should have been looking at the fucking dashboards, right? Like, I'm not gonna fucking keep spoon feeding that forever. But the fact of the matter is, you'll see a speculative uptick. And then everybody who's in waiting with possibly dry powder to speculate again, they're gonna begin speculating. So therefore this little surge will in fact auto-catalyze another surge, right? And this is all going to be timed with the fact that we're spinning up marketing and content factories. Meaning when we have new users, they'll be able to look at this chart, they're going to see these little trends of upticking, and then effectively we'll be in the position to auto-catalyze it to moon. Do you get what I'm saying? We needed to get to a point where we could moon. Before, where we had TWAPs, just kind of like parity with meeting, we needed the fucking PyreGas tokens to be big enough so that when they're at the meeting line, they're not just like locked there. Does that make sense? Yeah. So when we get back to the meeting lines, people will be able to sell their PyreGas for the peg tokens and deploy them in liquidity, which by the way will help people even get a little bit more profit on the way back to peg as well. You don't even need to do this for Genesis. Like, you should just do this, honestly. I'll get more into that later. When we get back to the actual Mead TWAP line, I'll explain more about that. But why not put it in Genesis too, right? Anyways. I mean, think about how many projects you've probably watched come and die. And like our entire like open beta period is longer than like, I don't know, 10 other projects' lifetimes. Do you guys recognize this? Do you guys see it? Like, I want to say February 10th was when we were officially in open beta. February 10th of this year. And now we're almost in September. We're not going anywhere. Yeah. Why would we? This project cannot die from red candles, which is, again, that's literally like a superpower. Think about other projects. Like, I mean, again, I don't know what to say. They won't make it from that. They won't recover from that. Yeah. But not us. Yeah. We don't have that problem. How was I going to prove it to people that red candles can't kill this project, do you guys think? Like, what needed to happen? Yeah, Javery, that would be more like a chain failure too. But I want you guys, Javery, I'm glad you brought that up. Okay, Javery, and you can put it on screen actually. Only way it dies, yeah. Only dies if Phantom, BNB, AVAX go to 0. Now, what if I told you that PyreSwap's existence hedges against that happening? Oh, but do you even understand that PyreSwap's existence? Why? Yeah, because every 6 hours there's a gas demand for these fucking coins. Every 6 hours it's like, well, there's still just a gas demand. So like every 6 hours for the rest of time, there is a gas use case for these 3 coins. Does that make sense? Because the fact of the matter is, you're bidding on historical volume. Does that make sense? And the fact of the matter is, everybody who's speculating on this is betting on its past. Does that make sense? When you play the IWV, you are literally playing for past money. And then when people speculate on this fucking token, they speculate on like, on gas. They're playing on like future use cases. Do you get what I'm saying? Well, believe it or not, thank you, ZeroKex. Yes, I'm keeping that tweet as like pinned there for fucking ever. Yeah, it would take a lot for me to unpin that tweet. The IWV and the gas, you're playing on future use cases. Does that make sense? Well, literally, the IWV, we're keeping a bunch of money stabilizing the future. Does that make sense? We are using the past to stabilize the future. Do you get what I'm saying? Right? So literally, its past behavior creates its future use case. Inception? Inception, or you mean Looper? You mean Looper? I don't know. Yeah, no worries. Tenet? Okay. Yeah, I wasn't going to guess that one. Okay, I haven't seen Tenet, so yeah, I have not seen Tenet, but anyways, do you guys get it? Like literally, you're taking the past volume of the token, you're creating a new reason to use the gas token, right? Like the gas token's volume, it gets stored where you play for it in this yield. Does that make sense? And the fact of the matter is, we always have this tranche of money waiting to get distributed to the IWV. Does that make sense? Because the IWV creates volume, which effectively feeds the IWV. I wonder if you guys just heard me say before how $100 of volume on this DEX can cause $1,000 of volume. Yeah. Palindrome. Is palindrome a word that's forward and backwards? Did I just freeze on camera? Yeah. But do you guys get it? Yeah. Like literally, it's like we are past exposed and future exposed at the same time. Do you guys get what I'm saying? Like our level of presence, we're actually as a system, we're in the future and the past at the same time, right? Because we are effectively the existence of PyreSwap, especially as it gets bigger, it has to get way bigger. I'll be honest, okay? You guys knew that, but user base is the metric that matters. As it gets bigger, it can effectively. By the way, we already on Phantom at least, we already rank in the top 10 gas guzzlers multiple times a day. Did you guys know this? We are in the top 10 gas guzzlers every 6 hours. Did you guys know? I wonder what happens when we get bigger. I wonder. Yeah. I mean, Seabiscuit, you've seen us rank there before, right? I stopped bragging about it because it started getting too regular. Seabiscuit, again, we have the claim that we just can't die from red candles. ZeroKex, that is, yeah, I have definitely, in moments of great zealotry, I have in fact considered that yeah, so not only can PyreSwap and the GPSC economically support a chain, it can also economically dominate a chain too. Does that make sense? I think, ZeroKex, that we'll be able to prove that a lot, I think, when the next crypto winter starts. Yeah, I think, like, my goal is not so... Okay, my goal is that, like, when we have that next crypto winter where Bitcoin crashes from 200 grand or something like that, that, like, there, we're able to just drink community in. Does that make sense? Like, we'll be able to swell our community from maybe a few thousand to, like, a few 100,000 or something. Do you get what I'm saying? Because our charts will be the only ones that are still kind of, like, not sad. Does that make sense to you guys? In fact, if you understood what PyreSwap did this, like, you know, if PyreSwap is going to reach its peg this time, the next time you see it, you'll be even more bullish. Do you get what I'm saying? You'd be like, oh, well, I saw PyreSwap come back from 0.005 TWAP. So, like, I'm not really going to freak out about it going to, like, 0.1. PyrePhantom, PyreBNB, PyreEX. Everybody follow me conceptually? All right. Okay, we're about over an hour. Does anyone have any pressing questions? We're gonna get more. We have more stickers coming tomorrow. More on that later. If you haven't followed the Turkish PyreSwap account on Twitter, it is at PyreSwapTR. So if you guys could, at PyreSwapTR, if you guys could follow this Twitter account, it has like 30 followers now, I think. But I would really like to get it over 100 because for those of you who don't know, we have like a bunch of Turkish KOLs, Turkish influencers that are like waiting to work with us. There's like 6 of them, I'll say. They are Turkish Twitter KOLs, and they want to kind of like have a Twitter shilling campaign for our project. Does that make sense? So I would like that to kind of front load that account with some background. So if you guys could at least give that account a follow. Later on, you can unfollow it if you find it annoying because you can't read Turkish, right? But like if you could help by following it now, that would be extremely appreciated on Thankful Thursday. Okay. More on that later. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Doc. I know that I owe a lot of people DMs right now. A lot of people are waiting to hear back from me in a DM. I didn't even say good morning in the chats today because I was working on something else. But I will definitely GM the chat. Okay, I'll GM all the chats, and I will also reply to all DMs. So DMs and GMs are getting done. Okay, if you're waiting to hear back from me, you're in a stack right now. And I definitely get back to people. Thank you guys so much for coming to the PyreSwap show. And we'll just we can just end it right here. We'll see you guys tomorrow, later day. If you don't know the time, please check our Discord. Have a great rest of your day. Goodbye.